you have to get prepared that there may be an African American history question on the test. They're very common. Okay, so to do this, when you're talking about African American history, DBQ, long essay, you got to have a lot of brain. You got a lot of brain dump, a lot of data dump. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about here. Okay. So we'll go ahead and start this. All right. First thing, we got to start Colonial America. That's where it all starts. What we try to do in here sometimes is to give you guys little tidbits of things that will probably get you extra points on the exam. One of them is this. Know who, let's see, Pedro Cabral. Okay, he's the guy that in 1500, remember, he kind of bumped into Brazil, trying to find a way around South America, and he's the one that introduced plantation agriculture to the New World, okay? And by implication, he introduced African slavery. If you have that in there, that provides a deeper context. So Pedro Cabral is the guy that introduced plantation agriculture, and then by implication, African slavery. It's why Portugal built an empire, a mercantile empire, based on the slave trade coming out of West Africa. Okay, so that was in place for anything else. It's important to remember, and just for the sake of reference, that Portugal was the first European country to engage in the slave trade. Okay, Spain never really did to that great extent, but it was Portugal and England more than any two. So Cabral's a good one to know because that puts slavery in Brazil, which of course was sugarcane, and it will work its way up through South America to the islands and then to North America. Okay, so now we're at North. Oh, by the way, something else. Okay, as the sugar plantation industry works its way up South America, okay, into present-day Venezuela, it will jump into the islands. In fact, if you go to the Caribbean today, there are still sugar plantations there. You can see the ruins of the old sugar mill. The biggest export they have is rum, which is made from sugar, okay? So as it works its way up the islands, the center of the slave trade in the Caribbean will be Barbados. Okay, that's important. That's important. Barbados is the outward of the Windward Islands, and it was a British possession. So when slavery started working its way up, Britain settled Barbados, and that's going to be the source of where American slaves come from. Okay, so Barbados will be the basis, all right? Okay. And based on that, we start with this. 1619 at Jamestown, there is a Dutch ship sailing from the Caribbean to Massachusetts, okay? Some of the passengers on board are indentured servants, but it stops in Jamestown for provisions. It was just off the coast. It had just gone through the ship killer. It had some damage. So it comes up the James River, it docks at Jamestown, and for the first time, the English settlers see Africans. Okay? And that's when the little candle goes off in their brain and tells them, hey, wait a minute, we can put these people to work. So this is the first slaves come to North America in 1619. It's important to understand something about slavery at Jamestown, and this is something we talked about way back in September. Remember that the preferred method of labor were indentured servants. White indentured servants, okay? And the reason was very practical. White indentured servants understood the culture. They understood British culture. They had been raised in England. They knew British law. They knew British customs. They spoke the language. They were Anglican. So the preferred method was, because they knew that indentured servants had a short life as far as their labor and lifespan. They're going to be freed after 7 years. So if you're going to bring people into your colony that are going to eventually be colonists, you want them to be familiar with the culture. That's why they preferred indentured servants. The problem with indentured servitude is this: the supply will run out. The supply will run low. Whatever condition in England supplied indentured servants, like so many people going to debt prison and things like this, when that supply runs low, your labor runs low. So by 1619, they're looking for a way to replace indentured servants, and that's when the ship shows up, okay? There's going to be a rising and lowering scale, okay? The more Africans that come to Virginia as slaves, the fewer indentured servants there will be, okay? So that's one thing to keep in mind. As soon as slavery is introduced, it will replace white labor. And here's why this is important. If you fast forward ahead to the years before the Civil War, and you have these people called the Free Soilers, okay? One reason the Free Soilers supported slavery was they wanted them kept in the South, because the more former slaves take jobs, the less white jobs will be available. That's the same dynamic that happened in Jamestown, okay? In Jamestown, slaves obviously don't charge anything for their labor. It's free labor. Slaves are slaves for life. That's one difference in the two. Once you have a slave, that slave belongs to you for life. So that means that this slave is not going to be free You're not going to have to give them any land or anything like a mule or implements to farm and stuff like that. So slavery is pretty much a one-time investment, which makes it profitable. One more thing before we leave this, okay? Always remember that indentured servitude is short-term labor. Slavery is long-term labor, okay? That's an important thing to remember. That's what makes it desirable to people in Virginia, okay? Massachusetts will be the first time to legalize slavery. That's kind of an anomaly because as the years go on, Massachusetts will be the basis of the abolition movement, especially after the Puritans settled. But Massachusetts, and these are Puritans, will be the first one to legalize slavery. By 1700, it will be legal in all colonies. Guys, that question has popped up on the AP exam, and kids miss it a lot. Okay? When the question says, what percentage of the American colonies was slavery allowed by the 1700s? And kids will put 90%, 80%, because they always think that the Northeast and Puritan New England didn't have slavery. That's not true. All the colonies had slavery. Okay? All right. The only original colony to abolish slavery's charter was Georgia. Okay? And they finally eliminated that by 1735. We're going to talk about the colonies a little bit later on. Georgia was a utopian experiment. Okay? What they wanted to do is to develop a debtor's prison for debtors to have somewhere to go, and they wanted to have a way they could see that plantation agriculture would work without slavery. Obviously, it didn't. Okay? So the thing that you draw out of all of this, okay, is once slavery, and guys, please remember this. This is extremely important for slavery. The reason slavery took hold in North America, one reason only, it was a labor source. That's it. It was a labor source. Guys, early, there's no political dimension to this, okay? There's no moral dimension to it. Everybody accepted the fact that you're going to bring Africans over to the New World, they're going to be slaves. So it was purely a source of labor, an economical source of labor, okay? And that's why it took hold. You may see questions like, discuss the dimensions of African slavery in the New World, 1700 to 1860. And the dimensions they're talking about is in 1700, it was a labor source. By 1860, it was social, political, and economic. So those type of things are important to remember, okay? Okay, late 1700s, we're talking about the years leading to the Revolution now, okay? Slavery's still there. Guys, we've talked about this already. Is there somebody else there? Okay. We talked about this already when we were talking about compromises. But slavery had a huge presence in the Constitutional Convention. A huge presence. Somebody fighting? No, I ain't coming in. No. You had it reserved. Okay. That's why I reserve these things about 3 weeks ahead of time. Okay. This fight goes on every year. Last year at Summer Creek it was fun. Okay, because they wanted to come in and get the LGI away from us so they could sit there and drink coffee and eat donuts. You know, I said, now let's get my kids in, and then they got mad at me. Okay, Constitutional Convention. Guys, one of the main reasons the Constitution had to be a compromise was because of slavery. Southerners will not let go of it. Southerners believe that slavery is requisite, it's necessary for their plantation economy. Always tie slavery to the economy. The North didn't rely on it because their economy didn't need it. The South relied on it because their economy did need it. That's why you had a slave culture in the South. Okay? So slavery is going to be a major part of the founding of the country. All right? We've talked about this already. So right here, you know these things already. Just know that the essence of slavery, and guys, if they ask you a question about slavery, you need to know all this stuff. Okay? Slavery was very present in the founding of the country. Okay? Had the delegates in Philadelphia not compromised on the issue of slavery, okay, then the Constitution never would have been passed. The alternative to compromise is 2 nations, okay? So it's that big of a deal. That's why Southerners held on to it with a death grip. That's why Southerners demanded 3/5 compromise, why they demanded that it be allowed to spread, okay? And once you pass the 3/5 compromise, that's the point that slavery takes on a political dimension. That's important. Okay, so the 3/5 compromise will add a political dimension to slavery. Okay, this is a big deal. Okay, and you guys probably know this already. The cotton gin is going to make it profitable. The delegates in Philadelphia would have never agreed to the slave trade compromise if they had known that. Okay? In Philadelphia, slavery was a dying concern. It was requisite, it was needed. Okay? But Southern farmers are starting to lose money off slavery. Plus, you're not making any money off cotton. Slavery is not that profitable tobacco. And until you make money off cotton, you won't make money off slaves. That's why that's a big deal. Okay? Any essay about slavery's got to have a cotton gin in it. It's got to be there. That's the watershed moment. That's when slavery stops being a concern on the back page and starts being the concern. Okay? Okay. This is something we didn't really talk about much, but it's important because it's context. In 1797, well, actually it started in 1792, Haiti is a French colony. Okay? It's a French sugar growing colony, and African slaves on Haiti outnumber the white colonists 10 to 1. Okay? Throughout the I remember this is the time of the French Revolution. The French Revolution starts to infect these slaves, and Toussaint de Louverture is going to hold a rebellion. It's going to last from 1795 to 1797. It was one of the most brutal slave rebellions in history. Okay? These people, the escaped slaves, would go to the mountains of Haiti. They called themselves Marrons. And they would come in at night, and they would hack as many white people to death. Eventually, the entire white population of Haiti was murdered. Okay? So, this is what's going to cause Americans to wake up and pay attention. This is what makes them scared of slave rebellions. A slave rebellion is an absolute nightmare to a slave owner because you don't have to give them motivation, it's already there. Okay? Some slaves believe like death is preferable to being a slave, so I'm going to kill as many white people as I can before I get killed. Okay? Whites never paid much attention to this because they were convinced of their own power in controlling their slaves until this guy. Okay? When people saw what happened on Haiti, when they saw the absolute, the bloodlust of all these slaves taking out their frustrations on the white population, that scared Southerners. Okay? So this rebellion right here, and guys, when you read documents and things going forward from that, they'll always refer back to this. Okay? One of the arguments that Southerners use to keep slavery is we need slave codes, we need the fugitive slave law, because if we don't do this, that's what's going to happen to us. So this rebellion in Haiti is going to be sort of like the point where Southerners believe we need harsher slave codes. Okay? Okay.